All right, it's 3 p.m. and good afternoon, everyone. We are delighted to have you join us as we kick off another insightful session on connecting the dots. First and foremost, we extend our gratitude to our esteemed speakers for their participation in this panel discussion. Brilliant SK is working for Times Pro as the Executive Vice President and Chief People Officer, leading the people strategy and transformation agenda. Sakshi Sood, she's working for Beiersdorf India as the Director HR, driving inclusive culture, employee engagement, and organizational growth. Sahil Nair is an HR leader and influencer, known for his thought leadership and impactful conversations on workplace culture and leadership. Ritika Chandok, she is working for RHI Magnesita India Limited as the Senior General Manager and Head Communications and Public Affairs, leading strategic communication and stakeholder engagement. A warm welcome to all. HRA welcomes you all to the session on this insightful topic, DEI Trend or Transformation. To know more about HRA and its events, I would request all our participants to visit the link and details posted in the chat window. I'm pleased to introduce our moderator for today's session, Ritika Chandok, who will be guiding us through the discussion with her insights and expertise. Ritika heads Communication and Public Affairs for RHI Magnesita India Limited, bringing with her over 2 decades of experience across diverse industries. Her professional journey includes impactful stints at Con Elevators, Bharti Airtel, SR Enterprises, Aegis BPO, and Exhibitions India Group. She has led communications, public affairs, PR content, and digital marketing functions with a strong focus on aligning messaging with business vision. When she's not shaping narratives at work, you'll find her on a run, strength training, deep into a book, or binge watching her latest streaming obsession. To know more about Ritika, you can follow her on LinkedIn. The link has been shared in the chat window. We are excited to have her moderate this very relevant discussion today. Over to you, Ritika.
Thank you, Faisal, for such warm introduction. And really happy to be here and looking forward to a meaningful conversation with all of you. And a very warm welcome to our audience who have joined us for this important discussion. Today, we are addressing a topic that many businesses are dealing with. Is diversity, equity, and inclusion just a trend, or is it truly transforming the way we work, lead, and grow? As businesses deal with everything from shifting cultures to global expectations, DIA has clearly taken the spotlight. But is it here to stay, or are we just following a trend? So I'm really excited to be moderating today's session with an incredible panel that we have of all the HR leaders who are not just talking about the inclusion, they're also living it, building it, and pushing it forward in their organizations. But before we get into the panel, I just want to share my own thoughts and say that DEI is totally and honestly one of my favorite topics to talk about. It's something I have been extremely passionate about. For me, DEI is deeply personal. So it's about being able to bring my real self at work like an unfiltered, unedited person. So it means that I don't have to switch to a work version of myself just to be taken seriously. And I can, lead all my projects, hit very tough deadlines at times, make sharp decisions, and still laugh loud in, a lot of meetings. And being my true self would definitely not mean that it doesn't make me less professional. It's, if anything, it makes me better at, what I do because I'm not wasting my energy into pretending to be somebody else. And I think that's the heart of real inclusion. That's inclusion for me. And I've also noticed that when people, don't just have a seat at the table, but feel like they are belonging there as they are, just as the real humans they are. So I think that's the best thing for any organization to do for DEI. So yes, that's DEI for me. And it's actually not about blending in. It's about being out, but very comfortably in your own skin. So I'm so excited to have this conversation today with our panelists and hear from them what they think about what DEI means to them. And to introduce the panel, Faisal has given a brief introduction. We have with us Brilliant SK, who is the EVP and Chief People Officer at Times Pro. So Dr. Billion, SK is EVP and Chief People Officer at Times Pro. He champions a performance-driven culture, prioritizing learning-centric approaches in every operational and quality improvement initiative. With a strategic focus on talent development, he built strong, capable teams to support the expanding business landscape. He's a Gallup certified strengths coach and Marshall Goldsmith certified executive leadership coach. Was conferred the top 10 global influential CXO awards in 2024 last year. Sahil Nair. Sahil can just say hi to our audience. He's the HR leader and influencer. Sahil is an HR thought leader and influencer. He was awarded the coveted Top HR Voice Award on LinkedIn, a strong testimony to his commitment to the HR and L&D fraternity across the country. He is also certified MBTI and NLP practitioner, happiness coach, a regular columnist, and visiting faculty at leading business schools across the country. So, being a certified design thinker, he loves flirting with ideas as he designs prototypes to redefine human experiences. He is a social media influencer and has close to 75,000 followers on LinkedIn. And I recently faced it when I sent him a request and could not get to him because obviously after a certain number, LinkedIn doesn't allow. And of late, he's been learning the art of podcasting. Do check out his YouTube channel, his radio show on Spotify, and show some love. Sakshi Sood, Director of HR by Stove India. Sakshi is a seasoned HR leader with over 15 years of experience across diverse industries. She currently heads HR at Biostove India, home to iconic brands like Nivea. Known for her focus on fostering inclusive workplace cultures, she brings a thoughtful balance between driving high performance and promoting employee well-being. With a deep understanding of evolving workforce expectations and a passion for brand aligned HR strategies, she continues to shape impactful people practices in modern workplace. But before we begin, I just want to share that unfortunately, Sakshi had a medical emergency and informed just before the session that she won't be able to join. But she was there in the catch-ups and she was really, looking forward to it. We wish her all the best and hope to have her in our future discussions. So let's begin the discussion. And my opening question for all the panelists is DEI just a buzzword, which is our theme also today, or is it triggering fundamental changes in organizations? And also, what trends have they focused, have they observed that point one way or the other? So maybe we can start with Brilliant. You?
Thank you. Thank you, Ritika. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Feels that COVID era when we are back to the virtual mode. First thing first, it's always like, Ruko jara, sabar karo. Well, I would have really loved to say that this is not just a buzzword, but the recent developments, if you see across the world involving multinational companies, makes me think differently. Large giants like IBM, Google, and many more have discontinued their DEI program. Now think about it. If they did not treat it just as a buzzword, these companies, would they have really rolled it back? It's just food for thought, or maybe Trump as an excuse to say, chalo yaar, jaan chuti, right? Many still take it as a checklist activity until and unless there is a deeper strategic integration of all the efforts towards DEI. I think nothing can reshape the workplace. But if you look at it, unfortunately, sorry Sahil, but MBTI is at play, which means मैं बोलता हूँ तो implement कर. And in that case, when मैं changes, a new thing comes up. So your focus moves from what actually should happen. And this is where I bring you back, Ritika, where you said that you need to feel that sense of belonging. And I think that is the biggest element or the fourth pillar, especially in the Indian context, where if I were to look at it, a woman getting married, coming into a new home, unless she feels that there is belongingness, nothing can change. So that biggest pillar of the DEI is belonging. And until and unless we bring that as a part of our keyword, it still remains a buzzword. I'm not saying that it's across, There are a handful of organizations which have found success. I can talk from experience that the more diverse ideas, thoughts, people from diverse backgrounds coming in, the better you become, not just as an individual, but as an organization. Your products change, your strategy becomes different. There were surveys wherein I think it was McKinsey and HBR who came up with reports that prove that until and unless you have a diverse and inclusive team, decision making gets stagnated. It's like always that one person mindset. So, yes, transformation can happen, but it requires people to move out from just taking it as a checklist activity and creating DEI as a fabric of the organization. And it doesn't require someone to say, कि policy की वजह से ले रहा हूँ. I am doing it because it's in my blood. I am doing it because this is what shapes my organization. This is how I value people. And it's beyond just the gender. Many of us get carried away by saying, अरे मेरे इसमें ना diversity है. You would have seen those advertisement which says this is a diversity hire, right? You're mistaking a gender to diversity. So I would say think about backgrounds, think about neurodiversity, think about cultural diversity. Create a culture and ecosystem where every individual, regardless of your affiliation, your education, your background, or even your cognitive style, feel that you belong to this organization. And that's the only time when we can fully unlock the potential of DEI. And that's what I think can get us meaningful action and lasting change. Over to you, Ritika.
Thank you, Biren. Such a real and candid take on the topic. Can we hear from you, Sahil? The same question.
Sure. After Brilliant's spoken, it's very, very difficult to say something different because he's been so candid and covered it so beautifully. The only point that I want to add differently is, and maybe I'll go back to Brilliant, right? When you look at Brilliant's jacket and his label pin, of course, it's about his organization. But many people who have interacted with him closely also know that the T on his label pin is not just representing his organization, but is also representing Toastmasters, another T, right? And people who've seen Brilliant, and I've had the good fortune to know him for over a decade now, um, public speaking, being part of Toastmasters, getting people to come on stage and interact is his second nature. And therefore, everybody who spends time with him will essentially walk back thinking, how can I be like him, or how can I be a better speaker? Because that is his DNA. That is something that he stands for. That is something that he commits time to. That is something, whether he is holding a position or he is a past president or whatever he may be, or whatever role he is doing, he is still living it. It is not just for the title. It is for who he is. But Ritika, if I go back to your introduction, where you spoke about saying you are welcome being who you are, and you don't need to switch on work mode or switch off work mode. That, to my mind, is where magic happens. That, to my mind, is where I don't walk into a checklist to say, oh, today I need to focus on DEI. Oh my God, today is June, and now it is a certain month of the year, and therefore, what are the 5 activities that we are going to do because we also stand for this? Or, oh, I am a global organization and there are certain power centers in the world that are changing course. And instead of downstream, now it is upstream. And therefore, I need to now change the way I navigate my boat. Now, when all of this happens, you get stuck between buzzwords and transformation. But real transformation happens when Ritika can walk into her office being who she is, not just without the fear of judgment that, oh my God, people are going to look at me as head of communications or this, that, or whatever. But अगर मेरे को हिंदी में बात करने का मन है, तो मैं कर सकती हूँ. मुझे ये नहीं सोचना है that, oh my God, अगर मैं ये शब्द इंग्लिश में बोलूंगी या हिंदी में बोलूंगी या पंजाबी में बोलूंगी या मलयाली में बोलूंगी, लोग सोचेंगे कि why is she like this? And I think the ability to create that kind of a culture across the board from the junior most employee to the senior most employee, the moment you're able to make it daily affair, like just normal behavior, you will realize that it becomes DNA. But if it is not, then you need to do special initiatives, special projects, set targets, measure against targets. And for the longest time, I think DEI over focused on gender. But look at the way we've covered a great distance from gender to saying, I am comfortable in my skin, I'm comfortable as who I am, and people accept me for who I am. With all my quirks, with all my neurodivergence, with the way I dress or the orientation I have, or anything of that matter. And I think fundamentally, different organizations have taken different efforts in this direction, but hand on heart, have we really transformed on this agenda? I don't think so. I think there is a long journey ahead of us, and through your questions, hopefully, with all the support of HR AI and dialogues like these and various other forums that are making this center stage, we will move the needle, and I'm an eternal optimist.
Thanks, Sahil. In fact, super relatable topic and response for me because yeah, it's the journey has not been simple and easy as just bring yourself to work as it is because there were times that you were called, she laughs so loud, maybe she's casual, maybe not serious for work. Will she be able to handle? So all that is behind me now because I think after a certain point in time, it really doesn't matter. But I really feel that this is still not gone completely from India, or maybe I don't know if it's outside also, but definitely not an easy journey. It's really takes a lot of really passion for this thing to kind of get through this with this attitude. So thank you so much. In fact, I have another question for both of you. This time I think I'll start with Sahil so that you have an edge over Brilliant. So how do you define authentic DI? Though you touched upon this in your last response, what differentiates it from performative check boxes, which is also the topic of our discussion?
Absolutely. So I think I touched upon this earlier, but maybe I'll elaborate a little more. I think three tectonic shifts are very important. One, are we actually making this part of daily behavior? And if it's part of daily behavior in everything that I do, am I being inclusive? I've been very lucky to play roles in inline HR, internal HR, and in business. And having been on both sides, I can tell you that for the longest time, HR kept asking business, can I have a seat at the table? And in business, when you give HR a seat on the table, inclusion has already happened. But the question is diversity playing out? And here I'm referring to diversity of thought. Is HR really playing the level up game to say, okay, now how do I contribute? Or is HR saying, hey, this sounds interesting. Maybe we can do these three things. And then business doesn't look at HR as support or a corporate function, but looks as HR as a business. And I very firmly believe that HR is business, right? Now that's point number one. Point number two, once inclusion has happened, am I always going to wear that bias at the back of my mind to say, oh my God, this person doesn't understand my business? Or am I going to say that, listen, I need to walk 5 steps to help my HR leader understand my business so that we can work together, right? As you said, someone may laugh very loudly, and that could just be a gesture. Or someone may come and give a very radical thought, and I may say, no, but it's never worked this way. Or can I say, hey, you know what? This sounds very interesting, and therefore, let's do it. And third, and most important, I think it takes a lot of courage to stick your neck out when it matters the most. So I have seen many organizations that have been ahead of their times on an agenda like DEI or different agendas, and maybe they've faced the wrath of society. Maybe they've faced ridicule. Maybe they have had backlashes to say, this doesn't work in our culture. But the beauty is, are you able to fine-tune what works in your context, because every organization is different, every promoter is different, every multinational is different. And second, are you able to give to your audience, your employees, your customers, your ecosystem, bite size inclusion that allows them to say, hey, it sounds fantastic hiring someone from the LGBTIQ community. But when they walk in, I don't know what pronouns are, because the last time I heard of pronouns was when I was in school. And therefore, I'm very confused, or I don't have clarity on how do I need to address that person. And that person can see that hesitation in me. That person can see that I am uncomfortable. So then, is the onus on the other person who is walking into the organization to make me feel comfortable to say, Sahil, I'm one among you? Or am I, as the organization, taking efforts to make that person feel comfortable? And while this is one end of the spectrum, in mature organizations that have done all of this, whether it is training, sensitization, awareness, you, me, and all of us are the same. We're all children of God. And therefore, am I getting too complicated with jargons and pronouns? Or am I just saying that, can I have a heart-to-heart connect with that person beyond the mother tongue influence, beyond the accent, or beyond the voice change because I've undergone a sex operation or a gender change operation? And I think that, Ritika, is about authenticity in DEI.
Absolutely. In fact, that's exactly the kind of insights and the topics and the examples that we are hoping to bring out today, very candidly. So, same for you, Brilliant. Can you also throw some light on the same topic? How do you define authentic DEI?
Sorry, I forgot the torch. Just kidding. So, we discussed it, right? Authenticity is not about labels. It's what we call as substance. क्या है क्या चीज? I'm sure many of us would have gone to Lonavala, and the one thing that stands out is Chiki Chiki Chiki. And there are thousands of shops named as Maganlal Chiki. But the only real one delivers the authentic experience. And in a similar metaphorical comparison, I would say, DEI is not about just what you see as external branding or the, sorry to use this word, hollow kind of showcasing of certificates saying that I am DEI compliant, best place for women, etc. It is rooted in belief. It's the understanding that each and every individual, irrespective of the background, irrespective of the upbringing, irrespective of the education, irrespective of whatever circumstances they have been, bring unique value. And it's about equity, not equality. And unfortunately, we tend to mix it up a lot, right? And that is the one thing that drives progress. So it's not about HR checklists. It's not about posting on social media saying that, I am DEI compliant or I am aligned for it. It is systemic. It is led from the top right down to the bottom and not created out of what we would call as FOMO, the fear of missing out. Until and unless there is real accountability, long-term commitment, it will not work. And while Sahil was talking about that sex change operation, instantly I recollected something that happened in my organization a few years ago. We had an in transition person and we had no clue on how do we manage that situation. And no offenses, right? I don't know. I had no idea about how do I treat that person. And as Sahil said, he, she, her, what do I call? This is still fine. But when it comes to usage of restrooms, how do we do it? This person had not fully transitioned into a woman, but at the same time, imagine when this person walks into that male washroom, there is dead silence. A very awkward situation. We did not know what to do. People used to walk out of that place. I'm sure the individual in that situation would have felt uncomfortable. The challenge is there, but we still managed. We started creating small and, as Sahil said, bite-sized interventions to tell people that, this is reality. Let's not treat this person different, but give the person space. If the person is comfortable walking into a male washroom today, treat the person as a male. The day the person feels that there is transformation and fully move to the other side, so be it. And I think from a deeper perspective, I know I would be sounding like some Sadhguru or the Sadhu Babas, but reality is we need to treat everyone as human beings. Until and unless we get into that mode of treating people as human beings, we will still get caught in the rut of caste, creed, religion, gender, whatever it is. And from a corporate perspective, I would like to add that authentic DEI demands conviction from the leadership. It requires continuous sensitization, and it is not like banded. You cannot just say कि चलो ये मैंने कर दिया. It needs to be an operation which goes on. Each time you will encounter challenges. Okay, you fix this, fix this, fix this, but make sure that it applies to everyone and it's not just select few. That is the time when we can say that we actually have authentic DEI in place. That's my submission, Ritika.
Totally agree. In fact, yeah, I completely agree with you that it has to be driven top down, especially when it comes to, changing the entire mindset and culture within the organization for anything. And now moving back to Sahil. Sahil, since in your roles previously, you have seen multiple DEI journeys across sectors. What are the top two mistakes organizations make when they start out?
I think, Ritika, that's a very, very powerful question because I think many a times, whether it is leadership or people driving such agendas who might be from diverse backgrounds, their ability to be sensitive to even awareness could be very different. We spoke about equity, but the fact very clearly is a person from Agartala is not the same person from America. A person born in HNI household versus a person born in Dharavi is not the same. And we need to recognize that fact. Also, many a times we may notice that we may have a certain agenda, and I loved the way Brilliant gave a new definition to the Myers-Briggs type indicator to say मैं बोलता है, whatever, तू इन कर. But the point is that who are we driving this agenda for? Are we driving it for the board? Are we driving it for external stakeholders? Or are we driving it for the person who it actually matters to? And many a times, if you really go back and apply design thinking principles, are we actually keeping the user in the center of everything that we do? Are we creating policies? And Brilliant gave a lovely example of washroom, right? But to my mind, a washroom is an outcome. I am moving 5 steps behind to say not everybody may be as social, not everybody may be as extrovert. I may be a very introverted person who may actually have the fear of even talking or speaking up of my challenges. And therefore, if I have the fear of speaking up for my challenges, our organizations at a fundamental level, even creating a psychologically safe space for not just people to come in as they are and laugh out loud if they want to without thinking that, oh my God, I'll be perceived as casual, like you said. But even saying that, hey, you know what? I'm not feeling all right. And therefore, is there a space where I can just rest for a while, or I have to only go to the restroom or only go back home? Now, that is a very critical need. And therefore, if you look at extraordinary organizations that are into the future, they not only allow you to think of creative excuses if you want to fall sick and say कि आज ये मर गया, दादी मर गई, मामा मर गया, whatever, which we lighter vein say, but saying that, hey, you know what, it's raining in Mumbai, the weather is super awesome, and I want to just take a holiday because I want to drive down to Khandala and have Magan Lal Chikki. Now, how does this get received in terms of diversity of thought? Will your manager come back and say, you know what, यहाँ मेरी लगी हुई है और देखो मगनलाल चिक्की खाना है? Or say, you know what, Sahil, that's a brilliant idea. Go out, have Maganlal Chiki, but you know what? I think by tomorrow we need to send this to the client. So will that get managed? And as long as work is not suffering and work can get managed, are we even open to such kind of thoughts? That's at a pre-surface level. And if you go slightly more deeper, you will realize that a lot of people who feel that they belong in a certain place actually feel a sense of belongingness where they don't feel judged. So the question is, I think while DEI is a fancy label or is a great title to have, if you get into the subtitles when you're doing your PhD thesis or writing a book, you'll realize that it is that couple of lines in a certain chapter, in a certain part of the book that resonate most with you, rather than just the cover of the book or just the title. And I think a lot of effort needs to be done in those specific lines that touch people, that allow them to feel belonged without a sense of judgment. Because that's when people will be their true selves at work. And just borrowing from what you said, Ritika, they will not have to switch on or switch on work mode.
Totally agree. In fact, really well put. I think that really resonates with a lot of us here. I think the action that you said that, people saying that or giving that kind of a thought to the manager, it's the, what goes behind it. What is the culture? Will I be kind of not judged if I say this to my manager? First of all, I think we have to get there. So move some needle there. But then that part is also still far-fetched. I mean, leave aside even sending this messages from the subordinates to the manager that, okay, today I'm feeling very nice and this is raining and everything. So I think we have to kind of really, really travel really fast there. So now moving on to Brilliant. How do DEI considerations shape your hiring, curriculum, and faculty at Times Pro?
Yeah, thank you for that. And sorry, Faisal, Maganlal Chiki got a lot of
Yeah.
stage time at top time. I think we should ask them for support as sponsors for the next event. But yeah, jokes apart, if we were to break it down into the three elements, which is recruitment or hiring, curriculum development, and content management, and then the faculty part, I would say for a very long time, knowingly, unknowingly, we had a skills first approach. And one thing I still remember way back when we went into a huddle to define the vision, mission, values for Times Pro, our CEO said something very, very beautiful and powerful. He said that hire for the right set of skills and hire someone smarter than you. So we always had that focus to prioritize which is important, being an organization which is not as large or a multinational. Job readiness, intent is very important, right? Many a times what we have seen, unfortunately, in people who want to get into the job is, yaar, मेरे को ना जितना JD बोला है उतना दे दो. I will not go beyond. I will not stretch. And most important, it's not about a pedigree or a geography. Sorry, but not from Harvard, but from Harvard also works for us. I would say learners by attitude. One of the core values that we have is learner centricity. And until and unless I see that element of learnability and the attitude to learn within individuals, I think it will restrict the growth phase. The mindset will not be there. And Sahil had mentioned, right, it's not about existing privileges that you bring to the table. It's about what you can do here and now to contribute for the future. And in a broader business perspective beyond this, we also use a concept called as hire, train, and deploy, which we do for a lot of organizations to help that it's always potential that trumps the background when you have the right set of training, the right set of tools, and the right mindset. When I look at curriculum development, it's a given that today learning is accessible to a wide range of learners across the globe. So I cannot be rigid and say this is the only way I will learn. I need to be flexible. We've been talking about bite sized learning, learning on the go, and there are options if you look at it. How do I want to learn? I want to learn chapter 1 first, and then chapter 10, then come back here. I need to be what I would call in a technological sense is device agnostic. whether the person learns on a mobile, on a pad, on a what is it called, a laptop or desktop, it doesn't matter. The experience has to be seamless. And that breaks down into accessibility, right? From a place where you have edge network to a place where you have 5G. The focus on of some of the programs that we do with our partners is work experience based. So it has nothing to do with whether it's gender, background, or anything else. It's about creating that cohort which is diverse in nature. I'm sure you would have seen brochures which talk about saying these are the kind of profiles, these are the kind of organizations, these are the kind of experiences that people bring in. And I think that is one of the biggest advantage, where when the team gets back into thinking about what goes into the curriculum or the content, they start analyzing all of this. They reach out to the learners who are on the ground, ask them questions, and then fine tune it. And from a faculty perspective, I think I I don't have to do much, because most of our partners, which are Indian and global institutions, which include IIMs, IITs, for the executive education, they give a diverse range of academic perspectives, bring in industry experts, and most of these institutes engage with faculty who are diverse in nature, right from their background to experiences. Very, very similar to a movie, I would like to say. There are what we would call as the key protagonist in the movie, who's like your superstar. And then there are character actors as well who come in, do their part, and move. That is the beauty. So DEI is built in. It is not something where I have to pick and choose. And as Sahil was mentioning, if I have to say, "Arey, ye checklist mein nahi aaya hai," then it becomes problematic. It's directly linked to what we have as our value proposition. It's about providing accessible, high quality, relevant education that empowers learners all through to thrive, especially in an evolving economy. We are evolving and we'll continue. It also shapes in the way how we look at people, how we look at things. And it is not just restricted to the hiring element. It's right across the spectrum, be it curriculum development, be it content management, be it how we do research, or even the expert management who come in and deliver sessions for us in our leadership sessions. So I think it's a golden rule for us to say, if it adds value, that's the right thing for us to do. And that sums it up for me.
Really love how you frame that and the submission also. I think it brings real clarity to the conversation. Coming back to the curriculum part that you mentioned, in fact, the next question to Sahil is a bomb. So it's basically a very broad topic in itself, Sahil, and we had like very huge curriculum around it in my last company. So that's called unconscious bias. How do you advise companies to tackle unconscious bias without making it a tick box activity?
I actually think there's a bias playing out. Both you and Brilliant are laughing right now. I don't know what's the joke, but I am feeling as if there's a bias. Jokes apart, I think that's one of the most sorry to highlight, font size 72, bold, underline, italics, whatever works. But I've seen many leaders who come back and say there should be zero bias. I think ideal world. We're all humans. We all have biases. Some are more pronounced than others. Some have learned how to window dress it very beautifully and not show their biases. But I think unconscious bias, the first step is to be conscious about unconscious bias, right? Do you know what you don't know? And if you don't know what you don't know, how are you going to solve for what you don't know? Sorry, but it's a tongue twister, but it's very, very simple if I have to simplify it. Do you know what you don't know? So do you even know that you have an unconscious bias? Because the moment you know that you have an unconscious bias, then at least you're aware of it. Now, the second step is, do you want to do something about it, or you don't want to do something about it? And, like Brilliant mentioned, a lot of this actually flows from the top. When you see the leadership play out certain biases, you find yourself under that umbrella of that bias, and then you start thinking, okay, even I have a bias and my bias can work. But when you see that the culture overall is about exposing unconscious biases, bringing them to the surface and opening up dialogue. And I think I've really seen the power of dialogue, right? Because when you have to look at whether it is psychological safety, whether it is unconscious bias, the fact that you call out that there is an elephant in the room. Many a times we don't like calling out the elephant in the room क्योंकि उसको बुरा लग जाएगा, इसका ego hurt हो जाएगा, this is not the right thing to say, brilliant बुरा मान जाएगा, रितिका सोचेगी कि साहिल ने इतना 10 मिनट का जवाब दिया जबकि सवाल इतना सिंपल था. Then you are not being vulnerable enough to call out the elephant in the room. But the moment you call out the elephant in the room and you're also vulnerable enough to say that, listen, I don't have all the answers. I don't think we've got it all right, but let's do something about it. I think that is the first step to actually move in this direction. And you'll be very surprised to know that the moment you get diverse people into the room, get someone who's just 1 month into the organization to say, hey, come, a couple of the senior leaders are having a conversation. Do you want to just join in? Get someone who's been in the organization for 20 years to say, hey, you've seen this organization evolve over the years, do it. In Brilliance context, get a couple of partners externally who've worked with you to say, you've been delivering programs, you've been delivering it. We're just getting a think tank together. You have been working with so many other organizations. What's your view on this? And I think a very strong moderator like yourself, Ritika, who can moderate a conversation like this with holding space of very different, very, very different perspectives and diverse thoughts, starts a dialogue. And then what do you do with that dialogue over a period of time in terms of actions that not just create value, because creating value, of course, is the buzzword, but how do you show impact? And I think creating value and delivering impact is where you actually have many use cases where you can come about and talk about it, and then other people also latch onto it. And that's what I think is the whole aspect of dealing with unconscious bias.
Absolutely right. In fact, you really hit on something that's central to the DEI transformation and trend transformation versus trend debate. In fact, unconscious bias is such a central topic to it because when I said that we had this huge curriculum that we went through, there were some practical examples and some real life takes that we were taken through that shocked really all of us because it is unconscious bias. Sometimes, even most of the times, we also don't realize that we're doing such a thing to someone, or we are being, or we've been the victim of something, because it can be as simple as, somebody walking into a discussion and the rest of the team just changes a topic or maybe just goes silent. So that's a big part of unconscious bias. You get into a metro and, you sit down and the rest of the team gets up. So, I mean, that's again unconscious bias. So we do not even realize that we're doing it or somebody is doing this to us. So that's, and you're very right when you said that you have to first realize that you're doing this, address that this is there, just talk about the elephant in the room, and then you've done it. I mean, you've achieved it. So
And I think Ritika
really
also,
takes.
these fancy words like imposter syndrome, gaslighting, all of them have got, people actually go and Google what these words are. But these are just fancy words that have come in. If you go back generations, a lot of these behaviors were playing out even earlier. It's not that they weren't existent. It's just that now, because they've got these fancy names attached to them, people, think, oh my God, what is this? But if you sit down and ask them, kya aapke saath ye hua hai? 90% of people will tell you either it's happened to me or I have seen it happening to someone. And therefore, then the question that comes up is, what did you do about it? Were you just a viewer watching a team win an IPL final after 18 years, or were you actually part of that team that decided not to change teams and stay with the same team? Or actually, were you someone who had that patience to be at it and ensure that I play every single game, every single day to the best of my ability, and then let the success do the talking. So I think DEI also is very similar. There are so many organizations that do amazing work every year, every day, every month, but don't put it up on their dashboard because that's not something that they want to flaunt because that's nature. It's like a very simple analogy of driving a car, right? When you learn car driving, you were actually taught you turn the gear to the left and put it forward, that's first gear, bring it back to neutral, again left and down, that's second gear. But after a couple of weeks of driving, you are listening to music, you're talking to someone in the car, you're driving, you're having a conversation with people, and gears are getting changed automatically without you looking at the clutch or looking at the gear. So that's the journey of moving towards transformation.
Absolutely. In fact, we might be the last generation to change gears because this generation doesn't know. I mean, they all have like automatic cars. And
Automatic.
yes, yeah, automatic, yeah, everything automatic. And yes, the buzzwords like gaslighting and the things that we are Googling these days, I mean, they exist, I think, from the era of Mahabharata and all those mythological stories, because if it wasn't there, then this entire war wouldn't have happened, I guess. So these things have always been there, will always be there, for ages to come. So now moving to Brilliant. Brilliant, in your experience, how can DEI be embedded into the DNA of future leadership development programs? I mean, the generation who doesn't know the gear card.
We've been talking of jargons, acronyms. It reminded me of how old I could be. If you remember, there used to be a good old ad, "Arey ye PSPO nahi janta." Right?
Yeah.
For a fan, Orient fan, PSPO, peak speed performance output. I think it is something which I believe, and we've all discussed it over the past few minutes. One, I would say, if you really want to embed DEI into the leadership development process, we need to shift from just, sorry to use this word, thought leadership to action leadership. It's not just about the intent, right? Everyone has good intent, but how is it translating into action? If you're making it as a program component just to put it on your dashboard and say, मैंने इतना achieve कर लिया, मेरे यहाँ पे ये हो रहा है, मैं social media में डाल रहा हूँ, then I think that is a problem. And that is the very essence of the foundation that we lay for future leaders and even cultivation of leaders, right? As Sahil also spoke about it. Is it that leaders drive it in the right way, or is it looking at saying कि यार सामने वाले ने किया है तो let's do it? I would say just think of the diversity part beyond just what is there as a definition. Uh, think about cognitive diversity. Different thinking is critical today. I mean, I can think three different things, but that is not the same thing as three different people thinking on some problem, right? It needs to come in. The problem solving approach, therefore, needs to be inclusive, needs to make it experiential more than anything else. I've had instances where someone is called into a meeting randomly and given a problem, saying कि अगर तू इसको solve करता तो कैसे solve करता, right? You heard that famous WhatsApp forward about that soap company which had a problem of empty soap boxes. They brought in design engineers, ideas were generated, and suddenly there was one person who said, "पंखा लगा दो, जिस box में soap नहीं है वो उड़ जाएगा." And sometimes you need to get that, and it comes from what I would call as life experiences. And people are actually afraid to go there. They believe that sometimes it's good to be in conventional structured format. uh, no offense to anyone, but I will not take names. Long ago, when I was looking for a mentor, I reached out to some very senior person, and the first question the person asked me was, "Which institution are you a pass out of?" And when I shared that, he said, "Sorry, I don't mentor people who are not from my institution." Now, think about it. I am a young, impressionable mind at that point of time. That made me feel as if I'm not a part of a larger group that we call as the HR fraternity. We are just there, and then there is this gap. And that day, I made a pledge to myself. I said, If ever I get an opportunity, I'll never ever think about some of these elements. I'll look at value addition. I'll look at what can I take from that person's experience. And that's why I love to call myself an experience collector, because I love to learn from experience. And that is the very essence of the lens that we always use from a leadership perspective. So we need to be constantly on the lookout for people from unconventional paths. My journey itself, I started off as a faculty, went on into software development, did some pre-sales, did some kind of sales, then jumped into HR. Now, if I look at the way in which I have shaped my career journey is based on the diverse perspectives that each of the experiences that I have had made me into the person that I am today. I go back to what I said earlier. It's not about equality. Equality has been misused, I don't want to use misrepresented, but it's not about equality. It's about equity at every single time. You need to understand that different people need different start points so that they get the similar kind of advantage that exists. It has to be focused on a right kind of mentorship. We tend to not talk about mentorship when we talk about DEI, but I think a lot of what we do requires a great amount of mentoring, especially when we are talking about creating environments where for some people it's risk taking, right? We need to make sure that there are biases. Sahil said, I don't know why you're laughing. It seems like a bias, but we need to break that myth and say, boss, this is not a bias. She was laughing on something else. I was laughing on something else. I was laughing on the fact that she said there is a curriculum. And she was probably laughing, saying that that question came to you. So, somewhere we need to understand that each one of us as individuals are driven by different biases and it impacts our decision. And building this into probably case studies, and I think this example of why we were laughing could actually end up as a case study where we can say that unconscious bias kicked in, right? And most important is the concept of allyship. We've been speaking about it, and I think it's becoming now a trend and a buzzword, so to say. But I think bringing in that kind of advocacy and sponsorship through the right set of people and the mindset, I'll go back and say what Madonna said long ago: Papa, don't preach. It needs to start from the top. Own it like it's your baby. Drive it. Share your stories. I told you very openly that I didn't know what to do when I had that person in transition. Leaders should start talking about even failure stories, right? That will tell them that we are also as human as everyone else. All said and done, everything works fine unless you sustain the momentum. It is not like an aerated drink that you open, the fizz is out, and after a certain point of time, it's not good for consumption. There needs to be continuous efforts to integrate and systemize it. Till then, I don't think any kind of development programs we do for leadership will embed DEI. It will just remain as a buzzword. It will still remain as a checklist activity, and there will still be unconscious bias. Back to you, Ritik.
But brilliant, I must say, brilliant. Thank you so much for making me feel better by clarifying what you laughed about and also assuming what Ritika laughed about. But imagine if I was someone who thought that both of you all were laughing on me and you didn't take the chance to clarify. Someone could have walked away from this conversation thinking that, hey, these two people laughed on me. And that
Yeah.
could not be true. That may not even be your intent. That may not even be what you were thinking. But I could have received it in a manner in which I chose to receive it. And therefore, that could impact me adversely and thinking, I don't want to be here. These people laugh at me for something I said or something that I didn't even say. And therefore, actually, Ritika, this reminds me. Um, I was actually doing a keynote speech at another forum, which was in person on DEI, and I was the keynote speaker there. And my opening slide, and I would love to share this with all of you because it will be very relatable. My opening slide actually said, what is normal and who decides? Two questions. What is normal? Who decides? And while that was the opening slide, the bottom line also said is who benefits from your definition of normal. Now, prior to COVID, we would all ask everybody, "Ha, kaise hai, sab theek hai?" Okay, then they get to business. You're not even waiting to hear from the other person how the person is. During COVID, we knew that we could speak to someone in the morning, great conversation, and maybe in the evening that person appeared little off, did not come on camera when the person always was on camera, and we would actually pause to say, "Ritika, kya ho gaya? Brilliant, are you okay?" And then wait for listening to the answer. I think unfortunately we've again come back to the same world where we've said, okay, everything okay, let's move on, let's get done with business. But I think the question is, what is normal for you may not be normal for me. And who benefits of this definition of your normal, and who decides what is normal? And I think if we actually start a narrative like this that talks about what is normal, you will realize that everybody has a different definition of normal. Some people may say, hey, you know what? I like a very fast-paced job. I like to solve problems. Someone will say, yaar, itna fast nahi. Like, it's okay. You don't need to solve everything in one day. And therefore, everybody will have a different definition of normal. The question is, are we even pausing to understand that? And not just understand, but even once the fizz is out of the bottle, are we refueling the same bottle with more fizz? Or are we saying, hey, can we have an alternate to this fizz with something that is equally caffeinated or equally energetic and solves the purpose without damaging us? Because the fad will go away, but the way you make people feel will stay with them for a lifetime.
I think really honest insights and powerful examples. This brings us, in fact, time just flew. We didn't even realize that we have to open for Q&A. So, Faisal, would you like to open the house for audience question answers? We could go on and on. I mean, don't rely on us at all.
So, Ritika, we already have 3 to 4 questions in the chat window. If you can see the chat, or
Yes.
you just need to
Right. So
click on message. Yeah.
yeah. I went there. So I'll start. Okay. So I'll take the first question. That's from Neha Jagnani. How do we ensure psychological safety while navigating difficult DEI conversations? It's an open question. Any of you can take it. How do we ensure psychological safety while navigating difficult DEI conversations?
See, it will end up being too theoretical, right? Because most of the time we really don't know. But I'll try to bring some aspects of what could work in. Most important is setting the, what I would call as the foundation of what and the why. Simon Sinek had already said that you start with the why first. But what we tend to do is we tend to get into it and forget about why we are doing all of this. So it's critical for us to start setting those what we call as ground rules. Sahil mentioned, right, it's important to listen to everyone. Give them from a concept of it's my perspective. Be respectful in everything that we do. Many a times when we talk about psychological safety, the kind of people who have those conversations and communication are not really skilled, and it kills it, right? I've been a part of Toastmasters, and Sahil had said it, so I'll bring that part of it. It's not about what you want to say, it's about how you say it that makes the biggest impact. And we need to understand that there is a lot of vulnerability that comes in if the messaging is not appropriately put across. And don't worry about numbers will come in, it's a given. Focus on the impact. Unless and until you see changes happen, you will continue to do what we say, itna percent ho gaya, itna percent ho gaya, but uske वजह से क्या हुआ, what happened because of that is the thing that we need to focus on. And we need to ensure that there is support and rallying all around for what we would call as a safe space. As you said, you should feel proud to walk into an office the way you want to without feeling concerned or worrying about चार लोग क्या कहेंगे CLK के. We are always pulled into that. Sharma ji ka ladka 98 लाया, मेरा बेटा 98.1 लाया, मैं आ गया. We need to break that mindset, and we create that as a space only when every single person in the organization starts behaving that. So set ground rules, build in the right kind of communication with focusing on the how part, and make sure that you focus on impact. And I think that will set the path for you. Over to you.
Next question is from Hiral Sharma. What responsibility do employees themselves carry in shaping an inclusive workforce? Sahil, would you like to take it?
Sure. I think it all starts with the individual, right? I think the answer is in the question itself. I can say that, oh, we need to create an inclusive workspace. These are the 4 strategies. Ritika, you should do this. Brilliant, you should do this. But the question is, what am I doing? And the best way to lead is to lead by example, right? And if you can lead by example, others will simply follow. So are you making the workplace inclusive? What are you doing to make the workplace inclusive? Are people observing you? After observing you, are they really following suit or are they not? And if they are not, why are they not? And that actually gets Hiral's question, links very, very beautifully to Neha's question, Neha Jagmani's question, to say, how do you ensure psychological safety while navigating difficult DEI conversations? I think many a times we don't ask, and there is a huge power in asking, right? We always have heard this saying, oh, getting invited to the party, being invited to the dance floor, and all of that, right? Let's say if in my mind, I think that, oh, Brilliant goes to HR conclaves events with a certain group of his HR friends, and every event they are together. Instead of me forming that thought in my head and thinking that I am being excluded, have I even once picked up the phone and asked Brilliant, just as an example, to say, hey, Brilliant, next time you're going for an event, can you call me? Would you be happy inviting me for an event? It is just about asking. Now, if I haven't asked that question, and I'm going to think that, oh, out of the 20,000 people that Brilliant knows, he will remember Sahil and he will call Sahil, it's not going to happen. So at times, even if you're starting on your DEI journey, there's no harm in asking people to say, hey, you've done this. I've seen that you're doing good work. What have you done? Can you tell me a little bit of what I can do? So I think the power of asking is brilliant. That's number one. And number two, how do you really get shape an inclusive workplace? There is no bigger power than the power of collaboration. You may think that, why do I need to invite this person to a meeting? You'll be surprised that the person who you never thought of in that checklist of inviting to the meeting may actually be the person who will contribute maximum to that meeting. So when you think of stakeholders, or you do a heat map, or you look at stakeholder mapping, think of the top 3 names that never come to your mind. And that will make all the impact. And that's the way you start getting more inclusive.
Perfect. In fact, power of asking is something that takes me back to the, I think, Tata Sky's campaign, which said, like, "Puछne mein kya jata hai." So
I
that should
actually
always
think we are
be.
doing maximum branding of all brands. I think I want to go
Yeah,
back
we
to
should
say
charge.
that this webinar has become like a brand endorsement, and it's hilarious to another level.
Yeah.
But yes, brands do a lot of stuff to bring real stories to life.
Yes, that's true. Faisal, there are 3 more questions. Do you want us to address them, or should we probably just
We take one more maybe, and then I think.
right? So going by the sequence, we have Vanshika Thakkar. So, what's your advice for companies just starting their DEI journey? Where should they begin?
I think, Vanshita, the simplest way to begin is what Brilliant spoke earlier, is answer the question why. Just because the whole world is doing it, do you need to do it? Why are you doing it? What do you want to achieve out of getting onto this journey? What does this journey mean for you? And I think when you broadly answer some of these questions, the next steps will automatically follow. And start small, pivot it, get feedback, see how people are latching on, and then go. Don't plan one blockbuster event and then let the fizz go out, but actually just start with small, start with answering the why. What do you want to achieve out of it? And is it just something that you want to do and you want others to follow? Or is there a need within the organization where people feel that, yes, Vanshita came up with this idea and this was the need of the hour? But Brilliant, you can add on.
Yeah, I'll bring back my software engineer hat here. I would go back to the very simple acronym PDCA: plan, do, check, and act. It covers everything that Sahil said, but in a structured manner. Start with the why. Plan what you want to do it small. Make sure that you listen. One of the things that we all end up missing is the ability to listen actively. We just इस कान से सुन के इधर से निकाल देते हैं, and it's like people say you're not listening. So if you're able to bring that in, I think it doesn't matter what kind of a company you are, what size it is. If you truly believe in it, that's the best way to go ahead, and you will definitely find success. So if I were to give you a short summary of what Sahil said, picking up from it, it needs to start from top down. T. Think about what is your priority. Is it really DEI, or you're doing it just because Sharma ji ke ladke ne kiya? And then you do a pilot. Don't go all out. Do something which works for you, which you can say, हाँ, ये मेरे लिए चल जाएगा. And I think that's most important for all of us to do. And if you're able to achieve it, I think you've been able to get to the level that you are, and constantly listen, irrespective of listen on social media, listen what people are saying verbally, listen what people are saying through their body language and actions. Thank you. Over to you, Ritika.
Super. I think, Vanshika, just to add, you should also know who should say what, right? As a consultant, if I gave you the PDCA framework, you would say consultant aa gaya, framework de raha hai. But when Brilliant gives you a framework, it sounds nice. So as you're launching some of this, also see who is the person who's saying what, right? So that it gets well received with the right intent. And more importantly, listen on social media, like Brilliant said, listen in the corridors, but also listen what are people saying in rooms in which you're not present or behind your back, because that conversation will also help you on your journey.
Absolutely. Really nice, in fact, very insightful and very honest conversation. I really enjoyed to the fullest, and I'm sure our audience would also have. Faisal, should we close, or
Yes,
do you want to say a word?
No, we can close. You can give your feedback on this, and then I'll close.
Yeah, I think I completely enjoyed the discussion. This was more like a, something happening in my office, and we are just talking over coffee or something. And I think DNA is just not, I mean, what I can summarize is again that, and it's been on my WhatsApp status for like, I don't know, forever. I think the first and the always been there status is be you, the world will adjust. So that's my thing, and that's DNI for me. That's the attitude. And DNI just not about policies or targets. It's about creating spaces where people feel seen, heard, and respected. I think that's the most important point. And thank you, everyone. Thanks, Brilliant. Thanks, Sahil, for such candid examples. I think we really touched a little down the surface. So let's see how we can take it forward now. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sahil.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for your outstanding moderation. Your skillful felicitation brought both energy and insight to the session, guiding the conversation with clarity and a strong sense of purpose. You truly elevated the session. A grateful appreciation to Brilliant and Sahil for sharing their insightful perspectives and thoughtful contributions. Your time and effort made this session truly impactful. Looking forward to many more enriching and engaging conversations ahead. For those eager to revisit today's insights, the session recording is available on our YouTube link shared in the chat window. A special thanks to our event partners, Geisha, NASCOM COE, Telgro, TLE, WICCI, LinkedIn Local Ahmedabad and India for their invaluable support in making this event a success. To learn more about these associations, please refer to the link provided in the chat window. We look forward to welcoming you to our next session on the topic CSR as a competitive edge, how companies use social responsibilities to build a stronger workforce on June 12th, 2025. With that, we conclude today's webinar. Thank you for being part of this journey. Wishing you good health, positivity, and success until we meet again. Take care and farewell for now.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
sir.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.